One thing that can be really confusing about creating healthy boundaries is even knowing what your boundaries are. I remember a time years ago when I was in a workshop led by another teacher. We were invited to pair up and stand about 10 feet away from another person. And then the assignment was to invite the other person to walk slowly toward us and stop the person when they got close enough. Well, the person walked right up to me and bumped into me because I never got the feeling, okay, that's close enough. And that's what it's like to have no boundaries or not know what our boundaries are. It was like this for me for years. I was wide open. People could ask me for things and I would say yes. Or they would tell me what they thought of me and I would believe it was true. And then, in reaction to that, I would put up huge boundaries like a fortress, withdraw from everyone, and say no to everything. I didn't know how to find that middle ground where I can sense what I need to say no to and what I want to let in. For me, learning to know what my boundaries are was a gradual process. What I'd like to do today is share with you some tips so it doesn't have to be as gradual for you. Well, the first thing that happened for me was realizing later that something had violated my boundaries. This happened in two main ways. One, I realized later that I had said yes to something that I really didn't want to do or that wasn't right for me to do. And two, I realized later that someone had said something that hurt me, but I didn't say anything at the time because I didn't feel it until later. It was like coming home and finding bruises on your body and then realizing that someone had punched you. So, saying ouch or I don't like that when someone says something hurtful to you is a boundary issue. Like, you don't get to talk to me like that. Or if it's not safe to confront the person, then at least being able to withdraw from the situation and acknowledge and care for the inner feelings. So the first thing that happened was that I became aware later that something had crossed my boundaries. Sometimes literally months later. And then that time began to get shorter. Because I was learning to be aware of myself, months got down to weeks. And weeks then got down to days. I remember how exciting it was when I actually realized later in the same evening that an interaction with another person had crossed my boundaries. Okay, so the first step for you is to be aware of times in the past when an interaction crossed your boundaries and you wish you had protected yourself better, no matter how long ago that was. The next step will be to ask, what got in the way of knowing that at the time? How come I didn't know that at the time? What was between me and knowing that at the time? Those are three different ways to phrase that same question. So it could have been, some notion of politeness, or not wanting to hurt the other person, or old family patterns where you're not supposed to ever contradict the other person. And this is something you can get curious about and explore. And then the final step would be to ask yourself, what resource would I have needed at the time in order to know and speak up about that boundary? Okay? And this can really get you some interesting discoveries and help you get your boundary superpowers in order, all right? So I'm going to take you through these three steps in the audio exercise that's part of the bonus. And before we go there, let me just add this. I finally got to the place where I could feel and speak up about my boundaries in a kind way in the interaction as it was happening rather than later. And that was truly amazing. And there's one more skill we need to be able to do that. And that is the skill of pausing. I might not know anything yet, but I at least know I need to pause. And I can say that, like, I need a minute, or I need some time, or wait. If I've been practicing being aware of my boundaries and getting closer and closer to the present moment, then in that pause, I can probably feel what I need to be aware of. The pause is priceless. So in the pause, check in with your body. Do you feel something in you tense, guarded, uncomfortable? That's a good sign that something is going on that needs to be addressed. It's okay to ask for even more time from the person if it's hard to know at the time what you need to say. Okay? So next, when you have some time, click on the exercise download and we'll do the exercise.